article like ages back, it's like 8 years now, but it's like design is invisible. Good design is invisible. Honestly, that's what it is. The strong will survive. And yeah, I mean, I think I've said this 100 times over, but if you don't see what's happened, right, with the pandemic, where everything went to online based, we became super in demand. Basically, once you hit senior designer, you come to a crossroads. Like if you want to move up to the next level in your career, and this isn't offered for some other companies, this is if you work in bigger companies, but you either go the management route, which is like what you said, you manage a team or group of designers or whatever, or you stay on what's typically called the IC or individual contributor track, but then you move up in a leadership level. Just for clarity, I'm on that one.
All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you gonna do a dance?
I just did the thing with you.
That's the dance, yeah?
Oh yeah, I did it. I was here.
Okay.
Mine was bigger though. Mine was bigger.
Okay, I'm keeping that in. I'm gonna keep that one in.
Good.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Modus Operandi. I am always welcome with a special guest who I love bringing onto the show. We were just saying she keeps me on my toes when I do bring her onto the show, because she will challenge me with the sort of questions I'm going to ask her. So welcome, Miranda.
The two-way street. Awesome. Glad to be here. Always glad to have the chat with you.
Yeah, I do. I really do love our conversation. It really does stem from our last conversation that we had, and there was really great amazing topics in there. I had some great feedback about that one, because I think you mentioned something that struck a chord with a lot of people, and it came towards the end of the show. I think we put it as a snippet in the beginning, that we are actually degrading our value by constantly having to show our value in UX, and I love that. That bit was amazing. So
that was nice. Yeah, it was such a cool, like, to get to that topic and think about like why as designers, like why we feel this need to kind of just be yes men all the time, or yes people. So yeah, I love where we landed on that, and I've been thinking about it for the past month. I'm like, does that sound true? Is it the reason we're always just saying yes? And it's because we have this incessant need to feel to show our value, to prove that we're, we can do something. But at the same time, it might be doing more harm than good.
Before we delve into our topics, and we got some great topics today, and again, drop your comments below as we start to go through this, and if there's anything that's resonating with you, I want to delve into that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think in this profession we are constantly having to get validation? Let me give you my 2 cents in it. Do you think it's because of the design aspect of our role, that we're creating something and we want to make it have an impact, well, not just have an impact, but also people to be impressed by it and wowed by it? And that kind of validation also stems down to our professional aspect of the role. Like, what's your take?
Yeah, I think it's probably multifaceted, right? I think at least up until this point, which I think we're seeing a bit of a change in the industry, going more towards, we're seeing a bigger landscape of product designers and designers who need to understand business and product side of things. But up until really now, designers could just be creatives. They just come in and they can be truly creative. They're creating brands, they're creating, and for a while it was such a mix of things. You might create a banner one day, an email another day, a website the other day. It's kind of such a mix of creative mediums. And I think we could just come in and do that. We signed up. That was the job that we signed up for anyways. Yeah, we understood the user needs, but we're always user advocating. But at the end of the day, you have to make that business impact, and you kind of have to prove to the value, or sorry, prove to the business your value. And I think over time, some businesses have matured into that. And there's just no question. It's like, yep, we need designers. They serve this value. Nobody's questioning it. But I think we're very far from that being the case for every designer in every company, right? So that's why there's this kind of incessant need for designers to prove themselves. And then they say yes to everything that comes their way. Yes, yes, yes. But are you producing the best value with the best understanding, the best rationale behind it every single time? No, because you're taking on too much more often than not. But yeah, it's this kind of idea that as creatives, if you think about artists, because those are very different things. And it really struggle like in my early career, I was like, I'm not really a designer. If you think about the systematic understanding that you have to have, you create utility, but you do it by way of creativity. And yeah, and when you show somebody your art, you want them to be impressed.
Yeah,
You want
exactly.
you want good feedback. You want to be like, wow, this makes so much sense, all these other things. And I think that's where a lot of like, yeah, myself included as a junior designer, it's like you want that like wow factor. You want to show something that you've worked really hard on, a lot of consideration of it's beautiful, it's impactful, da da da. Da. But that's just not enough anymore.
Okay.
You're for some a very niche part of the industry it is. You see the what like awards, if you that's a perfect example of who they give accreditation to. Like there's very creative outlets, but it's niche. If you look at the vast majority of the industry, it's the Amazons, the Facebooks, the utilitarian design that serve a purpose. It is not art. It is not design. It's not something to just be purely enjoyed. It is to serve a purpose. It is to help somebody complete a task or do a thing. So more often than not, I wrote this article like ages back, it's like 8 years now, but it's like design is invisible. Good design is
Yep.
invisible,
Yep.
right? And it gets out of the way of somebody doing the thing. And I think designers a lot of time enter into that mindset of it's like it's creative, it's that niche part of the market. But the reality is they end up working where the money is or the
Yep.
majority of the jobs are in the utilitarian side of the industry now. So yeah, I think there's multiple reasons that there's just like incessant need. It's like, oh, creatives, we want to be impressive, but at the same time, we're working in environments where it's like, oh, I don't really understand the value of UX or what they could bring to the table. So I'm just going to ask them to do all these things and see what happens. And the designers are like, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah. But then you mentioned about this, and I'm just going to backtrack on what you just mentioned. And also, you made some content about this just recently. The difference
Hmm.
between a UX designer and a product designer. Now, I want the audience to really get a grips of this. Now, from your perspective, are they different in their principles, in general?
Are they? No, we don't have industry standards, so the answer is no. Yeah, I mean, you can look at at a job description, UX designer, product designer, look at the requirements, bar for bar, same for same. Doesn't matter. Nobody's keeping standard on that. Same thing, but at the same time, you can have a UX designer that does all that a product designer does. Then you have a UX designer who doesn't even touch UI. Bar none, bar none. There's just no standard across the board. But the way that the industry is moving, we are like full-heartedly going to see a reduction in that speciality. So like a UX designer who doesn't do UI, a UI designer who only does UI, like those roles aren't going to be needed anymore. You're going to have to do more, which is essentially what product designers do. They do more, they are more comprehensive, and they're expected to have a bit of that business understanding as well. That is the trajectory that we've been on for the last at least like 6 years, and we're only going to see more of it. So, yes, is my generic answer in that they are exactly the same, because they can be exactly the same. Now, job listing per job listing, they're not. So that's the reality.
It's weird because in my generation, I'm not going to give away my age. I never give away my age, but I was in I went through the generalist aspect of the career where a lot of companies in the beginning wanted everyone to do everything. Like I was a developer as well as a UI designer, as well as, I mean, UX designer, so all in one. And you've done the same as well. And then we went into the kind of specialists where, again, I went purely into UX. I'm a terrible UI designer. I'm going to hold my
Hmm.
hands up. I am really terrible when it comes to UI design. Um, and so from your perspective, we're now going back into that generalist kind of aspect in the design field.
That's a really, I love that you've summarized it like that because I actually haven't retroactively looked at it like that. But I would say we're going back to a generalist with an asterisk of speciality. So it's
Okay.
like, yes, you are expected to do more as a designer to be that generalist. But I think what helps people stand out, and it is almost a requirement, especially in the job market as it is today, is to have that asterisk of speciality. So specializing in service design, specializing
Mhm.
in B2B, whatever the thing may be, because that speciality, and if you're applying for those types of roles, that's going to make you look apart than just somebody who's like, I can do whatever. Look, check out my experience, see if it maps. But I would say, yeah, the kind of the baseline requirements are broader and wider as maybe what they were when I wouldn't say as far into development, but I think product designers then they're not doing so much development anymore, but more so research, getting their hands on that,
Yeah.
which is still a bit of a spectrum, but because you can still do development. But I think that's the breadth of a product designer, and then it's that asterisk that's important just for differentiation purposes. Um,
Miranda, I know we haven't even touched into our topics yet, but I still want to stay on this. There's something that,
Whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know me and you, we just freestyle as we always
Yeah.
do. Um, there's something that got flagged up to me, and I've had a lot of people who are kind of career coaches that have come onto the show, come onto the
Mm,
Design Ops Line show. Um, and one of the key things, and again, me and you, we're not far away from our generation, from the generation of designers. I think you're just after me in that aspect of in our career path. What I noticed when I was in my career as a designer was that you didn't have to have domain knowledge to get a job. You know, you could take design principles and UX principles into any application or any software or any type of product back in the day. You can say, hey, UX can be used for everything.
mm,
And what I've noticed nowadays, and especially with the career coaches who have come onto the show, is that a lot of the jobs that are advertised nowadays are also asking for domain specific knowledge, like
gotcha.
finance,
Totally.
medical, and stuff like that. And the principle that UX can be used anyway, I can sell ISO and Eskimo, that kind of aspect is not there no more. Now, what's your take on
Mm.
this?
Yeah. Straight up, it's because they can. It's because there's such a plethora of designers in the market. Why not ask for it? Can you get it? Can you still get 100 applicants that probably have that finance experience? Yeah. When we were back in the day, when the job market wasn't so oversaturated, could they as easily get that special experience? No. Is it an absolute requirement to do a good job in UX? No. And I think you could probably ask every recruiter or whatever, but is it so necessary? Does it really speed things up? Probably not, because domain knowledge to domain knowledge is so intricate and special. But might it speed up the understanding? If you work on internal tools, you go and work on internal tools. Yeah, you're in that headspace already. You don't go from large, I don't know, startups to big company or whatever. So they're looking to close that gap a little bit of onboarding time or transferring domain knowledge or whatever, even if it's 20%. And bar none, it is just purely because they can. Because they still have, plenty of designers applying with that specialty knowledge.
And Miranda, doesn't it like freak you out in some sense what these junior designers are having to go through then? Because as you just mentioned, if the, and obviously the market I know at the moment is just so oversaturated, but what chance do people like junior designers have if one, they don't even have domain knowledge, you know, and there's people out there that do. And again, we can shout
Yeah.
into the void, but what's your take? I mean, what kind of future do junior designers have at the moment?
My TLDR is that only the strong will survive. Like,
Wow.
honestly,
Yeah.
that's what it is. The strong will survive. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think I've said this 100 times over, but if you don't see what's happened, right, with the pandemic, where everything went to online based, we became super in demand. They needed a lot more of us to crank out all the demand of what people were doing online. Great. That made the bar extremely low to get in. But then demand people got back to normal lives. The demand wasn't so high. But and then now you have this oversaturated market. People were sold this idea of like, oh, I could get into UX, bar is low, opportunity is extremely high. It's a really lucrative career if you do it right. Bang, bang, boom, I want to do it. Give me a boot camp. But but now
Uh,
yeah, but now not the case. The bar is exceptionally high because of your competition. Now that being said, the people who have the luxury, maybe you're already in a career, you're in an adjacent career, you have the kind of luxury of time and potentially a bit of money to invest in your education, and you enjoy UX, oh my God, please enjoy the actual thing you're doing. Don't just get into it because it looks easy, because it's not.
it's
And
not. It
it's
is
not getting
not.
and it's not getting easier.
Mm-hmm.
um AI. So yeah, enjoy it and don't just get into it for the potential money or freedom, right? We see this like freelance lifestyle kind of pitched and promoted on Instagram and stuff like that. But if you can and you have that luxury, amazing. Take it. Take your time. Get educated. Do some little bit-bop freelance projects. Like build your way up to getting into the career. And if you enjoy it, you'll be motivated to do that. If you are not and you are crunched for time, you need a job yesterday, I'd give it a second thought. I'd really question if this is the career that you should be going into right now, because it's not just a 3 month kind of study and then jump into the job market and land something. It's just not in it. There's been people who've been searching for a year
Yeah.
or more
Yeah.
and not landing anything. And we can talk about tactics and if they're doing things right or wrong all day, every day, but it's not a guarantee. Like straight up, it used to be. I feel like it used to be a guarantee for, you know, 85% of everybody. Now maybe not so much.
Miranda, actually, I'm gonna delve into something because I mean that's one of the reasons that Vicky brought you onto Design Ops Aligned. And I remember when she
Shout out
found
Vicky.
your yeah, big up to
Hey
Vicky.
Vicky.
I remember when she showed me the content you were producing. It was like no bullshit content. It was literally you're telling how it is, and this is the truth about this industry, and you weren't sugarcoating anything about it. Now, I want to get your take, and obviously, it's not more of a gaslighting question, but do you think social media is the reason why loads of people have influx into this market who don't have the right skills to show value?
I think I wouldn't say I was like, yeah, I wouldn't say when there was that huge peak during the pandemic, was I hugely into the UX, like social media side of things. I don't know fully what the future opportunity that was being sold, but I will say a good portion of my content is in um rebuttal, I guess you could say, or in reality check to some of the content that I have come across on Instagram, which is very much this like I travel the world and I am on a beach working today and doing my whatever UX thingy and building websites and stuff like that, really undermining the amount of how difficult that is to
Hmm.
establish. And so, yeah, I mean, keeping in mind that there is a lot of different ways to go about being a UX designer. I talk a lot about the corporate side of things because that's the reality I've been living in for the past 7 years. And I also think that's kind of a lot of where people go originally because that's where the money is. Once again, like the reality is big tech is where you want to go if that's your prerogative. But that's not to say I didn't do agencies. I didn't do freelance myself. I didn't do all that. Then there's reasons I tried those paths and I didn't do those paths. I actually find freelance is a lot more work and it also doesn't have that job security. Can you absolutely do it if you're that type of person and absolutely achieve that freedom? Yes. You have to work your ass off to do it, though.
Yeah.
I did it, and the taxes alone made me want to get out of it.
Wow.
So, yeah, but I really hate seeing kind of this like ideal picture being sold to designers that it's like, oh, you can make some pretty websites and then go live on a beach in Costa Rica and you're set for life. It's like there's a lot more to that.
Yeah, you know why I asked you that question, and it's something that just flagged up. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention this. I flagged up with a team I was working with, not a team that I'm. Okay, it flagged up for a team that I was working with, and right now at the moment, accessibility is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got the European EAA Act coming in very, very soon, um, and these team of designers didn't even know a single thing about accessibility. And I'm talking from them, accessibility was, is the color contrast working? That was it. It was like
Okay.
it, and when I delved into um some of the history behind the hiring aspects, and when I've kind of looked into the CVs of some of the people, they came from a boot camp, they came from certain areas of learning for 3 months and jumped into the career, and they were not taught those fundamental things of, knowing accessibility. Now I know accessibility is kind of like a UI side aspect of the design aspect, of the
Yeah.
design, but you should know some form of like basic accessibility, right? Font sizes, ARIA labels, just the basics. And I'm talking, these people didn't have that knowledge. Um, and I really put it down to where they just sold something on social media without knowing things, fundamental aspects of the role.
Hey, but you're telling me these designers have jobs, right? Am I understanding you?
Yes. Yes, they have jobs.
The bar was low. I mean, or it's not a requirement for the company, right? I think like straight up, a lot of companies, and I think because it's still not a requirement, like in countries like America, the accessibility app or the GDPR or what was the accessibility one that came like 5 years
E-
ago to EU?
EAA
Uh,
one is the
Was it that? Is this the same one? Is
yeah
they just
yeah yeah
revamping it? Okay, yeah.
yeah
So yeah, I mean, the company that I got hit at got hit hard. I mean, with it, lawsuits and things coming at them if they didn't like get their shit
yeah.
together. So if there's some policies or things in place, companies are like, oh my God, I don't want to pay the money, so I'm gonna hire people with the skills to make my product accessible, right? Now, do companies really care? Like care morally about accessibility for the most part because it's bar none takes longer design work takes longer development work if we're being honest. So if they're not being pushed over the line to ensure that they meet accessibility criteria, I would bet my bottom dollar 9 times out of 10 they're not doing it because
Mhm.
it's not a requirement for them to do it. And therefore, you don't need a workforce who understands accessibility standards. It's not a requirement.
Then okay, now we're delving into our topic. Is it the responsibility for design leaders? And you're bringing people onto your team. Yeah.
Hmm.
You bring people onto your team. You've got a massive workforce in the company you work with. And is it the responsibility of a design leader to say, hey, look, I do require that people have some basic knowledge. I don't expect you to be an expert. So I don't expect you to be a developer, but I should expect you to understand some aspects of development, and is it the responsibilities of these design leaders to ensure that their workforce that's coming in should have those skills? Or is it the responsibility of the business culture to ensure that these type of people get hired?
I mean, I don't, other than maybe companies like Airbnb or something that's like purely design led, could I say that it's design's responsibility at the top, or the business responsibility because design is at the top.
Mhm.
Um, mm, all the FANG companies are product led companies, right? So at the end of the day, product is the decider of the business for the most part. Now, I have a hard time because I see the reality of this happen a lot, which is that if you're a design leader in a company, this is a real scenario, but I'm not getting any specific examples. You're a design leader in a company and you hire people with accessibility skills, or you literally try to upskill your workforce to have an understanding of accessibility.
Mhm.
But you do not empower or educate the business on the need for accessibility. So all that situation does is put your individual designers and individual teams in a situation where they're banging their heads against product because product doesn't understand. It's not a requirement of theirs. So why do they care? So you've just passed on this
Yeah.
kind of weight and responsibility to your individual designers as a leader, well, and not doing the work yourself to get it to be a requirement in every discipline, development, product, etc. If you don't do that work, either, and it doesn't have to be, one, it doesn't have to be one or the other, or even in a sequence, but you have to do as much work as you're expecting your individual designers to do in their team. And if you
Mhm.
can't, if your organization's just like, screw accessibility.
Yeah.
Like, we're not investing the money into that. Do not sit there and continue to push your designers to do something that it just makes their job basically a living hell because yeah, it's just not fair to them.
But then, so we could say that majority of the people that might be listening to this, majority of the companies that they work at, will not see accessibility as a beneficial thing to add on to their roadmap. Yeah. It's, you try and, it's as you mentioned, if you said to product, hey, we need to start thinking about accessibility, this is going to fall on deaf ears. But then, is it then the responsibility of designers to then ensure that their designs are accessible?
I think yeah, I think you absolutely should. Whether you have to educate yourself, and the reason I say that is extremely selfishly. Because yes, you are the user advocate. If you want to make your designs accessible to your audience and you actually care about that and you want to do a good job, learn accessibility. You need to not just meet contrast requirements, you have to meet all the accessibility standards. Now, will your product be 100% accessible without the development side doing it? No. Because you're not touching the code. You're not creating the accessible labels. Da, 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 da. You can advocate it. So do what's within your control. The selfish reason, though, is not just, yes, you care about the users, but the reason purely for yourself as an individual designer. If you want to go get a job after the company that you're working for in a company who cares about accessibility, you want to have that accessibility in your case studies.
Yeah.
So yeah, do it selfishly because there are companies who look for that. Maybe they don't do it their day to day, but they look for a designer who has that understanding. Might as well bake it into the work that you're doing today to better your advantage of getting probably a better paying job
Yeah.
after the one that you're working in now.
Yeah. Because somebody reached out to me, and actually a few said, hey, accessibility is not part of our roadmap. We're trying to advocate it. It really does fall in their fears. The only time I think we've worked with one company who jumped on the bandwagon about accessibility is when the client said you need to be accessible. And that's when they were like, oh God, we need to actually make it accessible. So they had to start from ground one. And I think the advice I gave them, just as you mentioned, slowly integrate it as part of your work. Speak to your design system manager and make sure that the components are accessible and, X, Y, Z. And that's my 2 cents to anyone listening. Try to advocate it in your designs, in your day-to-day designs, and slowly you will start to see everyone start to, merge and say, hey, these are the right font sizes, these are the right colors. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's part of your rationale, right? So if you're pitching a design and somebody says, "Why is that font so big?" or something along those lines, it's like it meets accessibility requirements, right? If we go any smaller, here's the cons of doing that. So just like you would use UX principles for any reason, you can use accessibility standards as well. And yeah, just do what's within your control. Advocate for people to understand it. If there's a lot of interest for people to understand accessibility, ride that wave as well. You can be that advocate. And again, that's the type of stuff that also looks really good in your career.
Nice. Please drop your comments below. We would love to hear if you're going through these challenges. We know that a lot of people are. Just ping us in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. If you're facing these types of issues, Miranda and me will answer them. And
Tell
we'll
us
give
your accessibility trials and tribulations
yeah.
with your company. Love to hear it.
We've gone through half the show and we haven't even hit our topic.
Classic.
Classic. This is what happens with me news. I want to go to this topic. And I think we touched on this topic on the last show. And I think it sparked up a lot of interest in me in what's happening with design leaders.
Mm.
Oh, I want to get your take on it. When you were in that kind of junior stage to mid-level, what do you think were the key things that you were looking for in your design leader to help you in your career path from your perspective? I see the smirk on her. She's gonna drop a really big answer on this.
You think as a junior, I was thinking about what I was looking for in my design? No. You're giving me way too much credit.
No, okay. I'll put it in.
I was grinding and winding, and if I got some good back, that was just the cherry on top.
Okay, let me rephrase the question then. What do you think is needed now in today's industry? What do you think is needed to be a design leader? Because, I'll be honest with you, I'll give you my 2 cents. And I was young when I was thinking like this. I really thought, managing a team is so easy. You just have to tell them what to do. And it's like, okay. But I was young. I was young and naive. And I didn't know what managing or being a design. I'm going to use, I'm going to use 2 different terminologies. There's a design manager and there's design leaders. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, when I was young, I was thinking to be a design manager where you kind of, tell people what to do and expect the result. And as I grew up and I learned, there is a lot to be a design leader, an actual leader in that design field. Now, what's your take about the 2 different aspects I just mentioned?
So many thoughts.
Yeah, this is going to be... Go for it.
Okay, I think just for clarity, just in case anybody listening to this doesn't understand, if you're a junior designer listening to this, you probably don't know the path just yet. But as you go up, basically once you hit senior designer, you come to a crossroads. If you want to move up to the next level in your career, and this isn't offered for smaller companies, this is if you work in bigger companies, but you either go the management route, which is like what you said, you manage a team or group of designers or whatever, or you stay on what's typically called the IC or individual contributor track, but then you move up in a leadership level. Just for clarity, I'm on that one. So every one of my perspective will be on that. However, I did dabble in the management and found out that was not for me. So I think your question was what does it take to be a good design leader?
Yeah.
In today's industry. So not manager. To really put that, because that's a different beast. But what it takes to be a good design leader is you better be a dang good designer. So too many times I see design leaders, and I guess this does go across the management level as well, because I don't care if you're a manager or a lead. You should get to the point where you are about as good of a designer as you can get, because you are about to lead others on that path. And if you cannot lead by example, I think you will not only struggle, but you might misguide others as well. Because otherwise you have to do a lot more work to understand what good looks like. You have to talk to other design leaders or pull from other resources because you are not it yourself. So I wholeheartedly believe that it is about it is about being able to prove it. And also, as a design leader, not so much for a manager, you have to be able to jump in when fires are burning.
Yep.
you gotta jump in, do some Figma. You gotta make a slide deck. You still gotta be able to like do the craft side of design. So if you're fully hands off or you were never very good at it anyways, so it takes you so long or whatever, you're not able to cover people as well. There's this really good quote that's always sat with me, and it's leadership is not about title or designation. It's about impact, influence, and inspiration.
Wow.
So regardless of if you think you're just going to like get that title and like you said, tell people what to do or just kind of easy breezy, I just think that's such a wrong way to do it. And some people do get into specifically management for this role. And this is what bothers me to the 10th degree, is that some people actively seek out management roles so that they can tell people what to do. And the reason they can tell people what to do is because they are the gatekeepers of their compensation, their performance, their salaries. And this is the number one reason I stopped doing management and switched back is because I hate the paperwork.
Yeah.
I hate it with a fiery passion. And I just found that I have the skill set to influence without the need of the title. I don't need to be their manager to influence them. And also they can come to me freely. I can say whatever I want. They can take it if they want to grow or not or whatever. But I don't need the hard structure around it. If you want to listen to me, great. If you don't, great. That's on you. So I think bar none, there's a few other, I think, things that make up a really good leader, but to me, that is bar none, like the first and only one. Especially, you could probably skip that for a lot of other industries, not in design.
Yep, definitely not. Definitely
Enjoying
not.
the content? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram for more updates. Your support helps us bring you even more great content. Now let's get back to our podcast.
And I learned, as as I mentioned, I was very young and naive and thought management was about that. But when you lead, it is actually quadruple the amount of work that you would normally do than when you were as a junior or mid-level designer. Everyone thinks you're just like, guiding people in a certain way and etc. But it's, as you mentioned, you need to be on top of your game. You need to be able to go into a Figma file, figure out what the hell is going on, be able to fix some of the issues that might happen with certain connections and symbols. And, you should be technically minded, as well as you should be able to not only just communicate, but you should be able to listen as a leader. I think a lot of people who go into this role, and they do have great knowledge and they do strive to push design teams in a certain way, very good communicators, but the ability to listen is also something I think people struggle with. It's like, can you listen to creative feedback? Can you listen to where the business is actually going and translate that to your team in a much more, how should you say, convenient way? And I think sometimes I learned the hard way of just jumping into something without listening and really taking into account what the business is actually trying to go to. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And that really strikes a chord with me because I have experienced a lot of terrible leaders, design leaders specifically. And one of the like shared characteristics across all of them is they never seek out feedback or like feedback about how they're doing.
Yeah.
Or like actively create a psychological safe space that their team can challenge them in a very critical way. And that is insane to me because you are only as good as your team.
Yes.
And if your team doesn't feel like they can challenge, or they, like you said, they don't feel like they're being listened to. I have goosebumps. I'm so passionate about this topic because I have been in the like grit of it.
Yeah. Hey, it's me.
Like,
it's me. I like to ask some challenging questions. Go for it. Let's go for it.
I love it. I mean, just this is my platform for like, but like, I find it so bizarre. I find it so bizarre. Like and it's one of those things where you've kind of suffered the consequences of so many people not doing that you then actively take on the approach to do the opposite, right? And that's what I do with all the designers that I interact with. I'm like, if you ever like, I want you to challenge me. I want you to rip my ideas apart. Like, do not be afraid. I don't care if you're a junior designer, challenge me. Because also, if I haven't thought this through well enough and you can actually challenge me on it, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm doing something wrong. So
No,
yeah.
You mentioned that it's that safe space you need to build, because as you mentioned, that sentence, "you're just as good as your team," is the number one statement all leaders should adhere to. Yes, you're there to guide them. Yes, you can be more technically minded, but you hire people or you bring people onto your team who know more than you. Because what's the point in being a leader if you know more than them? You know, and I've worked, as you mentioned, I've worked with some terrible leaders, and it's like, as you mentioned, they don't want to get critical feedback or creative feedback to say, what can I do better? Because it's like it feels an attack on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it bemuses me. And as you just mentioned, do you think it's because of that? So 1 second. We'll take two steps back, because now it's a very passionate topic.
I know we're all getting worked up.
We're getting worked up. You're going to knock me out in a second. So, do you think it's because people that have come from the UX background, who've come into that, and then most people do come from that design background and moved into design leadership? Do you think it's because it's that thing about validation and always wanting to be right, that they can't transverse to being a design leader and can't take creative criticism, has now produced poor design leaders, from your opinion?
I don't necessarily think so. I just think that there is such a divide in the requirements to be a good leader than there is to be a good designer. And it's literally jumping into the deep end. I haven't heard of or seen a good program of training or of anything. And this goes for research. This goes for any sort of very like craft focused kind of role. Management is not design. Leading is not design in any way, shape, or form. I have a perfect example of I've brought on a senior designer to this large project that I'm doing, and a part of it, he needed to delegate some work to a designer, or two designers actually. Never done it before. It's not a part of his role requirements, and he's also just mostly experienced being an individual contributor. So I was in this session where he was trying to delegate work. It was a nightmare. It was a mess. But like, whatever. I gave him feedback, said, hey, here's some thoughts. And he's like, oh my God, I knew it right when I walked out of there. That was bad. I don't think that has anything to do with us as designers. I think that there is not a good bridge of the gap between going from a designer to being a manager or a leader. From everything that I know, it is literally figure it out on your own. Even so much so is like, you have to seek out your own mentorship if you want to do it that way. And if you're misguided by an already bad leader and you get into this position, or a lot of times what designers do, because they do it in their just design roles, they jump into a company where you're now a staff designer. You're now a design manager with mentorship experience, because like, whatever. I just think I just don't think it has anything to do with the craft. I think it has everything to do with the lack of like intentional career progression, education around it, because it's the same for researchers, content people. It's like, because I think it's a really interesting kind of argument I have in my mind, which is, do you actually need to be a good designer to be a good manager? And I just said this like 20 seconds ago, where I'm like, you absolutely have to. You have to lead by example. And that's what I fully believe. But I would be very curious if somebody who is just extremely good at management, has no design background whatsoever, could they lead
Ooh.
designers?
Ooh.
Because they know everything to do to get them to that career progression. They know how to source other talented lead designers to help them along that path. You know, whatever. They fill the bits and bobs. But what we find is that you can be an excellent designer. You end up in a leadership position, but you have to learn by experience and learn by failing a lot of the time. And I know a lot of people have backtracked. A lot of people have backtracked for management and leadership because they're like, this isn't design.
Yeah.
Like, this
That's
is
what.
where you can get more money, but like, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's one. That's because that's what I wanted to kind of mention. Like moving from a designer to a leadership role, you're now looking at spreadsheets and
Yes.
OKRs and
Yes.
progress reports rather than I'm looking at Figma, and that's a big, massive transition. You know,
Totally.
I'm. I remember I'm looking at story points. I'm looking at velocity, and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" And then like, but it was a hard transition. I have to
Yeah.
admit that, and it's as you mentioned. I saw a lot of people backtrack because they're like, "I don't get to do anything on Figma," and I'm like, "Well, that's what happens when you move into a lead role. You have to let go of that." You
Yeah. And
know.
you do. And I think that's just really important for people to understand, right? If you want to continue to do the craft itself,
Mhm.
stay as
Yeah.
as a senior designer. You can make loads of money as a senior designer. You can still do side projects. You can do a bunch of stuff. Do like increase your breadth, not your like depth of going up in the ladder. But because for me, the reason it worked out for me, and why I like to be a design leader, and I don't necessarily care too much to do hands-on Figma stuff, is because one, I do that in my side project. Now I can actually sit there and enjoy doing it. I detach components all day. Nobody tells me otherwise. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I get to play, I get to be explorative and all these other things. But yeah, my day-to-day is in spreadsheets, and it's in meetings, it's in making project proposals, it's in delegating work, it's in reviewing designers' work, etc. But for me, bar none, being a designer, regardless of the tool that I use, because it wouldn't always be Figma, might be a workshop, might be some research, might be some whatever. For me, it's always the problem, the challenge of the problem, the challenge to solve the problem. So now just it's less so an individual product or user problem. Now it's team problems, like you said, efficiency problems, it's
Yeah.
process problems, it's whatever. And then I've just expanded my toolkit to include whatever the heck it takes to solve those problems. And that's why I remain interested in continuing to be a design leader. And I also
Mhm.
just love seeing people succeed. I love seeing people
Yes.
grow.
Yes. That's
Uh, in
that's
part contributing to it.
yeah. No, that you know what? That was going to be my bit. I was just going to say, um, I I really love to watch, and it came when I had my first child.
Mm.
just so everyone knows, I got five. But it's that aspect of seeing your team members develop and grow, and then when you hear the feedback from other people, like, hey, that person I was working in your team is amazing, I would love to bring them on again, do you have capacity? And that for me was the fulfilling bit.
Totally.
um
Yeah.
it gives you such an energy rush to hear, like, oh wow, that person has gone from being such a timid and shy person and not speaking up to being the one in the room who's leading it.
Mm.
And that's the satisfaction. It is a selfish satisfaction that but
We're not
that for me,
altruistic.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
that. And I think that's why I liked being a leader. And
Hmm.
one of the key things I always noticed about other design leaders who I just detest, and then one of the things I detest about these type of people is when they take credit for other people's work.
Yes.
It used to hurt me to the bone where they used to be like, the VP was saying, hey, great work, John, you've done this really well. And that person took all the credit. And then it came to somebody like me and I said, I had nothing to do with it. I just
Yep.
said to straight, I was just there analyzing it and watching it from the side. The whole credit goes to that person. If you want to say
It
thank you,
should.
yeah, send an email to that person, say thank you, bring them up in a town hall, give them credit. Me, I'm just a person pulling the strings behind. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can thank me for this part, but really the
Yeah.
rest of it is like,
And that's like
yeah,
99% of it. I only done the
totally.
1% to make sure they were efficient, they were delivering, they kept everyone communicated, etc., etc. So,
So true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, giving kudos and proactive kudos as well, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not just like, oh, when I receive it, no, I divert it. It's like, no, in any forum where you're talking about, it's like, first off, I just have to say thanks to the team, like, or this
Mhm.
individual, because they have like crammed, they've done side of the desk work, like whatever, whatever the situation might be. And yeah, I find that that's extremely, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like rare, but man, when it happens, you're like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
you're kind of like a little bit surprised by it. You're like, oh, they've called those people out, or like you see sometimes like, oh, here's the team that did this work. But I like for me, I always try, even if it's in a small group forum, if somebody just completed a task or completed
Mhm.
a deliverable or whatever, it's like, thank you. You said John. Thank you, John. Like you've done such an excellent job at like delivering these prototypes. I'm really
Yes.
excited to get them into testing or whatever. Like in a group forum, because I also
Mhm.
think that like managers are like, and I do it, I back channel people. I'll be like, you did amazing. But like if I have the opportunity to do it in a group session, oh, catch me there.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Because yeah, I don't think it's often enough that that happens.
we used to do it every sprint. We used to call it round or robin, and I used to get the
Yeah,
team members to say, "Oh, can you thank somebody in this team
that's
for
nice.
what they done during this
Yeah.
sprint, or where did they help you?" And they're like, "Hey, you know, Fabio, you helped me on this, and I can't thank you enough." And everyone has to go round and do one, and it builds that momentum with the team because they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we're in this together." And then when it comes to me, I'm like, "Hey, thank you all, man," because you know. I can't do anything without any of your lot's help. So
Yeah. I'm helpless.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's
Yeah.
like you mentioned, you're just as good as your team,
Uh-huh.
and you are helpless without them. And it then comes on to the next thing I want to mention, and I think a lot of what I see design leaders struggle with is in that profession, you have to steer the boat, and sometimes as you mentioned, because your team will question you and say, and you give that freedom for them to question, and that's a very good, safe environment. But sometimes you have to steer the boat in a direction that does get questioned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to put it in two cents, in two ways. One is that basically, if you've built trust in your team members, they will trust you, and you have to give them the space to question you, but you have to kind of ensure them that you're steering the boat in a direction that is, how should I put this?
That they
Putting
can have
them in the right,
confidence in. Yeah.
yeah, or not have confidence, but you know, just be faithful. Be faithful that your design leader is steering the boat, and that takes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because steering the boat or in a direction where there's getting a lot of questions, I've seen a lot of design leaders crumble. They're like, oh,
Mm.
he's asking me too many questions. He's being like, negative and stuff like that. And I can't deal with them. I need to move them from one team to another. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, come on. I think if you're a design leader, you have to be confident that you are steering the boat. And when you do steer the boat, yes, you're gonna get pushback, but you gotta be confident to know that you're going in the right direction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in having that confidence, having the experience and knowledge to go gain that confidence, because whatever your reason or rationale to take them in that direction should be pretty solid. Or you also have the tactic of like, are you guys willing to try this out with me? Like, it might burn. It might fail. Like, and that's what you were saying before, like the camaraderie, the rapport that you have with your team. It's like, even if you're not 100% confident, but the reward is so high above the risk of
Hmm.
doing whatever. Um, be open. Don't like, I think that there's like, I think what you see with a lot of design leaders as well is like this like false confidence where they
Yeah.
feel like they have to know everything and have all the answers and like all this stuff, which leads to a lot of problems.
Yes.
Um, so yes, I do feel like you should do everything within your power to give a confident direction. But at the same time, what I've found are attributes of the most excellent leaders is that they are open about the things they don't know. They are open about the things that we need more evidence on. We need to try and see if we fail. Just have this like, not so black and white, like, approach, I guess. And that's huge. And I think that garners more success a lot of the time than just the like, here's the direction, guys, we're doing it. You're negative, you disagree. I don't care. We're doing it anyways, or whatever. Cause like, even you said that individual, which I have a recent experience of a manager kind of saying that. It's like, oh, I have this, he never wants to do anything, never wants to listen to me, you're challenging me. And, to the point where I want to move him out of my team. It's like, it's one, maybe you're right. But if I had to bet, it's probably because you're not doing enough to convince him, number one. Or you're not doing enough to get him on board to at least try that direction. Like, what does he say that the worst thing that could possibly happen is?
Yeah.
What is it? It's probably pretty low. A couple hours a week, whatever the thing you're asking him of him to do or whatever. But what's the potential reward? Should be pretty high. Don't waste their time, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm in full belief that like, if I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, I'll tell you. But it's like, let's go figure it out together kind of a thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
That was what I was waiting for. It's that bit where, and I think that is when I have seen team members really gather their strength around you when you have been honest and say, hey, listen, I don't know. You probably know more than me, but let's work this out together. And it shows that humility that I don't know everything, but my job is to get you to the finishing line. I'm really good at getting you lot to the finishing line. The steps along the way, I need your help in order to get you to that finishing line. And those are great leaders.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Those are the ones, I think we see a lot, we see a lot of bad leaders. And I also put it down to another thing that we mentioned in the last podcast. You need to build trust with your team members.
Yeah.
Humility is the biggest form of trust, of saying, I don't know what it is, but help me find this out. So
it's humility, but I think bar none, I say this with an extremely high bar, but it's respect. Like, I'm going to respect you if you can prove to me what you can do. Anytime a manager or a lead ever came in, if I was a senior or just a core designer, it would mean nothing to me. It would mean absolutely nothing to me that they were a role above me, or because I've seen a lot of designers kind of just imply this, oh, they're better than me, they know more than me, they because they're my manager or lead, they with absolute certainty are better than me. That is so not the case so many times. So I would absolutely not ever allow like a title to kind of warrant that just like implied experience or knowledge by any means. But yeah, it's that trust. It's being able to garner that respect by having that humility, and then also just proving by example. Prove what you can do. Showcase your experience and your knowledge in forums to garner that respect from your team as well. Because then you'll see them come to you. Probably too much. You probably won't be able to handle it if you do it right. Because they'll want your advice on everything.
Yeah, no, agreed. And there was one thing I remember when I was coming into this role, that I learned from a great leader. And everyone's been in this situation. I think we've all been in calls when you've spoken to a third party, and everyone, has to do an introduction about themselves. And a great leader told me, never say you manage somebody who's in the call with you. Yeah. And, and I learned that. So I remember being on calls, you have to speak to a third party vendor and stuff like that. And everyone gives their introduction, say, yeah, I'm the UX designer, I'm the product designer. And then I always say, I'm a design leader. I'm the colleague of
Everybody
XYZ.
else.
Yeah, I
Ah,
never
you
ever
don't
used to
create
say,
that hierarchy.
no,
Yeah.
I never ever say I manage. And I always said it to the team members. I'm not here to manage you. Me and you are colleagues. We're here together. I'm just here, again, I'm just here on a role to get you from A to B.
Hmm.
That's all it is. I'm not here to manage you. I'm not your manager and managing what you do. We're here in this together. I'm just here to take you, to steer the boat, to get you from one line to the other finishing line.
And I think enable them, right? Do you have blockers? Do you need information? Well, you come to me when you've hit something where you need support. And that's what I'm here for, right? Do you want direction or do you want to come to me with a proposal?
Mhm.
So it's all of that kind of stuff. I absolutely see myself as more of an enabler than somebody who just this is the direction you go here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Here is
yeah.
your B route, right? And it depends on the individual. Some of them do want absolute direction or can't find it themselves, and then
Mhm.
I'm there to provide it. But for those who want the opportunity to propose the direction, I'm all ears, right? So you really got to flex that leadership style, I guess, to each individual and what they want. So I want to ask you, if you were, let's say you're applying for a company, you're not doing what you're doing now, and you're looking for a new role, and you interview with some of the design leaders, what is a major red flag that if you were in that interview would just pique your oh, this might not be the place for me, this might not be the design leaders for me?
It's a hard question.
Yep.
If I saw, what do I
Or even
find
what
as
would you could what would you maybe ask as well, if you wanted to suss out if how the design leadership was somewhere as well?
I would ask them to tell me about their team. Yeah.
Okay.
And the one that always pulls up a red flag for me if they use the word my team. I don't know why.
Mm.
For
Okay.
me, when I've heard great leaders, they never say my. They say
Okay.
the team. They always used to say the team, the team, the team, the team. They would never say my developers, my designers. They're not
Hmm.
yours. You don't own them. And
Yeah.
for me, that was always a red flag for anyone I kind of work with, because it was like, you do not own these people. They're not something that you own. You work with them. And
Hmm.
that was one of the things. That's for me. That's how I
I
always
get
used to
it.
suss out. Yeah, I always used to suss out these types of people who pretend to be leaders or pretend to be great. Well, okay, say great managers, but if you are a manager, you will reference them as your team or something like that. So yeah,
Yeah, because I technically, yeah, they are.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
your team.
manage you. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
Okay.
one that
I
flags
get
me
it.
out. And
Yeah.
yeah, what's yours?
I have to, I do that. I say my
Okay.
designer.
Oh,
You wouldn't work
you,
here. You
you,
wouldn't work here.
you're not coming to design up Aligned. You know, we're not. I'll make sure I speak to HR. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Off the books, off the books.
No,
No, it's really funny though that you say it, because I totally understand what you're saying. And if it came off yeah, oh, might isn't my team or whatever. But I guess I've always expressed it in such a term of endearment. Oh, my designers are they're the best.
yeah,
The
yeah,
ones that I work, I guess it's or yeah, because I guess it's oh, the designers that I work with, 'cause they're not even my team. I don't manage them at all.
yeah, yeah,
But to me, they're the designers I've almost sought out or selected, and
yeah, yeah.
to me they have my respect and my regard or whatever. I guess that's why I frame it as my designers. But now you've got me thinking twice.
I would still hire you for Design Up Aligned if you ever look for a job.
Oh,
See
no,
that?
you say that.
Oh.
My
But
team, my precious
yeah,
team.
you know what? Yeah, you could call them your team, because if you do come to Design Up Aligned, I'll make you build a whole organization.
Yeah,
So
okay.
yeah.
Whole sector. Nice.
But
Um,
Miranda,
yeah, go ahead.
was also one more thing about what I've noticed about leaders is, and again, bad leaders. I know we are gaslighting a lot about bad leaders, but I think it is important that people who are listening to this show understand the the kind of pros and cons of being a leader. A good leader will never take credit again for other people's work. That's a big thing you should never ever do. And you should always jump in the middle when the shit hits the fan. And I'm going to use that sorry for that language. I apologize. And I always get the guests to swear. I never swear myself, but a good leader will take the punches for their team members.
Oh man, so true. Absolutely so true. If something faults, if something whatever, you take the blows for it. You take the responsibility, because at the end of the day, you are the accountable one. And if you're out here taking credit, but then not taking responsibility for things go wrong, ouch.
Yep. Exactly.
No, that's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, because I think it's like a famous sentence by Simon Sinek: "Good leaders eat last." So, if you really want to be a good leader, don't think about your bonus check. Don't think, oh, if I perform well, I'm going to get a good bonus. Actually put that out the window. Your performance and everything is based on how your team, how they're perceived, how they perform, and how they make an impact in the business. And the notion that, oh yeah, I have to protect my bonus and do well and this and this and this, just take it out the window completely.
Ew. If you have any of those criteria, or sorry, characteristics, you shouldn't be a design leader or a manager in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, exactly. That's why, again, as Miranda mentioned, if you like design and you like to get the credit and you like to be shown that you are performing, stay in that senior designer role. That's the one for you. You know?
I fully advocate, like, trial it out. Trial out all the paths and stuff, but like really evaluate. I have just boosting myself, but I have 2 videos that I've done this, like what it is to be a design manager and what it is to be a lead, and it breaks it down very practically what it looks like day to day to be both of those things. Let me tell you, neither of them are in Figma. So I would just really sit and try to get as much understanding of the role before you chase after the role, because it's you get to a senior level, you feel like you're like, what's next, and really those are the only 2 paths at the moment. Or you go start your own business, but at that rate you stay a senior designer and then just become a business owner. But in terms of climbing the ladder, what you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I was going to tell you about starting a business. It's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong.
I'll never do it.
We'll bring that to another podcast.
Okay, we'll bring it to another podcast. But I'll tell you right now, I've thought about it, and I won't do it. If you want to talk about not doing design tasks, start a business. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
We'll post up the video that Miranda mentioned in the show notes. Again, drop your comments down below. We would love to hear if anything has resonated with you about
tell us if you're like looking at the management track. Tell us if you're looking at the design leadership track. What questions you have about it. We're here for it.
Brilliant. Miranda, as always, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. But before you go, tell us what is in line as usual for the UX Survival Guide. I always love to know what's going on in your life, because we have our backward and forward contact, and we always get ready for our podcast show. But we'd love to know what's happening at the moment.
Man, you always ask me this, and I literally never prep for it, and I should. I should know better by now, but I really don't. A couple things top of mind are the fact that I might be going to Bangkok in the autumn to do a teaching. It's not a seminar, it's like an all-day kind of like workshop or something like that. So might be doing that with a UX Academy. So that's pretty cool. I'm actually speaking on Femke's, and I'm sure a lot of people know who she is. Femke's design cohort, actually it's April 1st this month. So in a few weeks, I'll be speaking over there. And then I'm just waiting to hear from you about some potential conferences in the works. So
yes, I'll be dropping. We might as well drop that one in. So we might have a potential conference coming up soon. Miranda has. Can I announce it? Can we say so? Miranda's agreed to be one of the main speakers. I was absolutely. I was doing backflips when she said yes, because I think, You know,
You get enough of me.
Yeah, I can't. You know, it's like I've been so blessed. I think the Design Ops Align podcast has been so blessed to have met Miranda. She was top of the list, and we definitely wanted her as the main speaker at the conference. So yeah, more details about this are coming out soon. Yeah, and our team was doing proper backflips when she said yes. So yeah, we're
Me
looking
too.
forward
If
to
only
that.
I could do a backflip.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm not going to actually try and do that on stage. I don't want to look. I don't want to pull a muscle as well. So
Yeah, we're too old for that.
yeah, exactly.
Oh
Hey,
man, cool.
Miranda, definitely. Been an amazing show. As always, great topics that we speak about. Again, everyone, we would love to hear any of your comments. We would love more engagement on our YouTube video. This video is only available on YouTube and not on other platforms. So please get involved, drop some questions, reach out to Miranda. She will answer as much as possible. Please reach out to her on her LinkedIn profile, also on her Instagram, on her TikToks. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun watching her
I'm
TikToks.
everywhere. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
you are everywhere. Actually, I've had a podcast guest, just before we wrap up, I had a podcast guest who came on, and she had mentioned she had seen you everywhere. Like, she came from
No.
TikTok. She's come from TikTok, and she aspired to be exactly like you. That's her exact words.
Wow.
I should have recorded this, yeah. And she
Wish you
mentioned,
did.
yeah, I was like, wow. She was like, you brought up Miranda Slayter to your show, and I've been following her for a very long time, and I aspire to be like her. So I'm gonna get her. Yep. She
Well,
loves
you know,
your
okay,
content.
after the recording, you're gonna give me that person's name. I'm gonna reach out to him.
Definitely.
Love that.
Hey, Miranda, till the next time, and
Till the next time.
we're gonna have some great
Appreciate
topics
it.
for the next one. All right.
Let's do it.